Okay, Monday, 5th of May, 2025. So, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Money, Monday, Bitcoin, and the other stuff, everything else. Bitcoin is the new benchmark. Now, this is something I realized and I alluded to on a video I did on, I think, 24th or 23rd of November 2024, that Monday video about Bitcoin. Because as Bitcoin's the new benchmark, meaning it's the new hurdle rate, as a lot of people say, meaning if you're not beating this growth over here, then what you're doing, by mathematical definition, is not the most efficient, most optimized strategy there is. Why would you go for 5%, 2%, 3% growth over here when this asset has been consistently growing at whatever percent per year? It's the opportunity cost. And it starts off minimal, but over time, that percentage, that distance, that missed chance gets bigger and bigger. And the sooner you realize the opportunity cost and how Bitcoin is the new benchmark, the better, meaning the less you lose. And the longer into the future you do it, the more you win. I did a video about this as well about a year ago, where I said that Bitcoin is the new denominator. If you denominate things in Satoshis and Bitcoin itself, and then that creates, you're better off essentially. I did a video about that as well, about the unexpected benefits of being on a Bitcoin standard. When you start valuing things in Bitcoin and Satoshis, life gets better. You get richer. This is all mathematics. We look at a lot of charts. You look at Bitcoin, or pounds to Bitcoin, dollar to Bitcoin, euro to Bitcoin, you name it, anything to Bitcoin, and the trend is very consistent. Remember, the trend is your friend. Now, I was watching an interesting video a few weeks ago, I guess a month or 2 or 3 ago, and that video is dated the 19th of March 2020. And in that video, it talked about how, again, March 2020, that Bitcoin was not a buy, not worth buying at all. And I looked at the chart of Bitcoin on that day, and that was the low of the decade so far. 4 years later, any day before and after, well, any day before and after the 19th of March 2020, the price of Bitcoin was not lower than that day. That was the low of the decade. I mean, we're halfway through, but nonetheless. And the person in the video was talking about not using or who's not appreciating, let's say, not admiring Bitcoin, to put it very lightly. And I realized that because on that day, the price had already gone up by whatever percentage, nothing else had done the same thing over the same time period, over the past 10 years, 15 years, and beyond. You could say, well, maybe you could argue 1 or 2 really specific things, but this is consistent. And I did a video about this as well, where risk and volatility are 2 different things. And Bitcoin's risk is very, very little compared to everything else out there. And so it was interesting because I realized then that nothing else, or very, 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 very few things had beaten it. So what does that mean then? And yet the things that did beat it, I can think of one, MicroStrategy. Because Bitcoin is described as the fastest horse in the race, if you're not using it, you're not leveraging that speed, that momentum, that inertia. One of the companies that did outperform Bitcoin over that time period, for example, since 19th of March 2020, was Strategy, MicroStrategy, or I like to call it Strategy B, because strategy and the Bitcoin signs are Strategy B. Okay, whatever. Now, what that means is that as the fastest horse in the race is moving the fastest, growing, the highest CAGR, if you're not strapped on top of it and utilizing it, if you're going at, say, I don't know, 10 miles per hour, and Bitcoin is going at 100 miles per hour, then together, logically, it would be 110. Makes sense. And I alluded to this in the video back in November, where I mentioned that, well, when different businesses get into Bitcoin, they'll be putting their business on top of Bitcoin and going even faster. Like I used the example in the video of Apple would create their own wallet that would go on the Apple Wallet app, and so they would probably skim off the top or fees, whatever else, from Satoshis, for the transactions. It makes sense. And that's, I imagine, just intuitively how that's one thing they would do. Fair enough. Now, when you start adopting, it seems, looking at the maths and looking at the general dynamics of the market, when you start putting your business on top of Bitcoin, you grow as Bitcoin has gone, as it has grown, and extra your performance, your logistics, business model, you name it. And we can see this in MicroStrategy's performance over the past 5 or so years. Generally outpaced Bitcoin. Meaning, again, if Bitcoin's a new benchmark, if you're not beating it, why settle for anything less? Why settle for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 10th benchmark? Why not settle for the best one? If you're not beating it, then you're not winning as much as you could be. Again, you're doing less efficient strategies and techniques to maintain or grow your wealth. And again, the maths points to this. The charts all point to this. The market performance points to it. So then it seems to be, as it's the new benchmark, if we're not building on top of Bitcoin or incorporating it somehow into the business model, we're not being as efficient as we could be. And a good example of this is X21, XXI.money, Jack Mallner's business. As it's going to be a Bitcoin native company, it's going to be fascinating to see how it grows in terms of the Bitcoin per share and the wealth, let's say, the share price, things like that. Easy metrics to follow over the next 5, 10, 15, you name it, years. It's going to be very, very interesting what's going to happen. And no doubt it'll outperform Bitcoin by leaps and bounds. No doubt. If we're going to look at strategies or MicroStrategy's performance and superimpose that, but on something as a purer Bitcoin play. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. And then over time, there are the companies and businesses that are using Bitcoin, putting it on their balance sheet and whatever else. Over time, we'll see how they will change as well, where they're strapping onto it. The company itself is doing 10 miles per hour, 11, 12, whatever, and Bitcoin's doing 100. Makes reason to say, combined together, they're going to go even faster. More and more companies, I think, as they understand this dynamic, will start building on top of Bitcoin, and the new hurdle rate will be everyone is outcompeting Bitcoin. And then it'll be a question of in risk. Why would investors want to buy their company as opposed to buying the benchmark or the new benchmark, Bitcoin? Well, it'll be a different play, trust, things like that. There'll be a specific reason why. Or it could be, this company's outperformed Bitcoin plus 50%, 10%, plus whatever percent over the past 5 years, which will be over the next 5 years, over the next subsequent 5 years. Things like that. We'll see claims like that over the next 5, 10, 15 years, quite easily over the time frame. Again, remember, when in doubt, zoom out. Think long term. Look at the chart in the past and think of it in the future as well. Where's the direction? The trend is your friend. That's one thing I learned in trading years ago. The trend is your friend. That's why I say look at the charts of dollar to pound, euro to pound, dollar to Bitcoin, euro to Bitcoin, pound to Bitcoin. The chart only goes one way. And what does that tell you? Trend is your friend. So Bitcoin is the new benchmark. If you're not matching it or not performing it, then you are not being as efficient as you could be, especially as the world is adopting it and governments are using it, saving it, storing it. I think it's going to be fascinating. I said to an acquaintance of mine a couple of years ago in June 2022, I said to him, look at the headlines of Bitcoin over the next 12 months, which now will be, 2 years ago of those 12 months. But yes, over the next 12 months, 12 years, we're going to see some very fascinating and very earth-shattering, let's say, not to be too dramatic, headlines and developments in the space. I did a video about this as well, predicting the future. Things that could be laughable today will be normal in the future. If had you told me X and Y and Z today or 5 years ago, I would have laughed. Well, interesting. What's laughable today? Well, it might indeed be future. It might indeed be the reality in the future. and as well as understand that as a rule of thumb, 15 years from now, things are generally different. A little different, subtly different, but roughly the same. But 30 years from now, it'll be night and day. Today will look like caveman age, primitive world compared to 30 years in the future. So could you imagine the developments of Bitcoin 30 years from now? Okay, and one interesting way to imagine those is what's laughable. What can't you imagine today? What would you laugh about if someone told you that? Then hey, it could indeed be true. It's an interesting metric. It's an interesting way to predict the future. But general anecdotally, it's an anecdotal way to predict the future. But yeah, it has some validity. But yes. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.